Hello, 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 and welcome back, beautiful people. If you are joining us today, we are so incredibly glad you are here. Today, we are going to talk about something that every single person on this planet has felt at some point in their life. That heavy, tight, uncomfortable feeling you get when the pressure's on and suddenly your mind goes completely blank.
Oh, yes, that feeling. I know that feeling way too well, Anna. And honestly, it happened to me just this week. I was in a meeting and someone asked me a direct question in front of everyone. My heart started beating fast, my hands felt a little cold, and my brain just stopped working, like a computer that suddenly freezes.
That is such a perfect description, and I think so many people listening right now are nodding along because they have been in that exact same situation. Whether it is at work, at school, during an important phone call, or even just trying to speak English in a real conversation, pressure has a way of making everything feel 10 times harder than it actually is.
Exactly. And what is so interesting is that you can know something really well. You can practice it many times at home, but then the moment the pressure arrives, it feels like all of that knowledge just disappears, like someone reached into your brain and erased everything. It is one of the strangest and most frustrating feelings a person can have.
And that is precisely why we chose this topic today, because understanding why that happens and learning some practical tools to handle it can genuinely change your daily life. Not just your English speaking life, but your whole life in general. Staying calm under pressure is one of the most valuable skills any human being can develop, and we are going to break it all down together right here, right now.
And before we go any deeper into all of that, let me just take a moment to say welcome. Welcome back to the Mr. English Fluent Tutor Podcast, your English podcast for daily life English, real conversations, and easy English listening practice. I'm Abel. Yeah, this is the place where you learn real English from real talk, from real people having real discussions about real life.
And I'm Anna. We are so happy you chose to spend this time with us today. Whether you are on your morning commute, doing housework, going for a walk, or just relaxing with a cup of tea, we want this conversation to feel like you are sitting with two good friends who genuinely want to help you grow, feel confident, and enjoy the beautiful journey of learning English.
So Anna, let us actually start right at the very beginning of this whole pressure thing, because I think a lot of people feel the effects of pressure without really understanding what is actually happening inside their brain when it hits. And when you don't understand something, it's very hard to fix it or manage it, right?
Absolutely right, Abel. And this is actually one of my favorite things to talk about. So here's what's really happening inside your brain when pressure arrives. Your brain is not just sitting there quietly. It's actually running a very fast background scan. It's checking the environment around you and asking one simple question. Is this situation safe or is it dangerous?
Oh, wow. I love that idea of the brain doing a scan. It's almost like your phone running an antivirus check in the background without you even knowing it's happening. And so when the brain decides the situation feels risky, what does it actually do with that information, Anna? Does it try to help you or does it kind of shut things down?
That's such a good question. So what happens is the brain sends out a kind of alarm signal. It tells your body to prepare for danger, and that preparation actually uses up a lot of your mental energy. Suddenly, your brain is trying to manage the physical stress response, trying to process the language you need to speak, trying to protect your pride and ego from embarrassment, all at the exact same time.
And that's why it crashes. That's why it freezes. It's not that you're not smart or not prepared. It's that your brain is literally trying to do too many demanding jobs at the same moment, and it simply doesn't have enough processing power left to do all of them perfectly. That actually makes me feel a lot better about my meeting situation this week, honestly.
Yes, and it should make you feel better, Abel, because this is not a personal weakness. This is a universal human experience. Every single person, no matter how confident they look on the outside, has had their brain perform that same crash at some point. The difference between people who handle pressure well and people who struggle with it is mostly about what they do in the moments right after the freeze begins.
So that leads to the big question then. What do you actually do when you feel that freeze starting to happen? Because in the moment, it feels like there's nothing you can do. You're standing there, everyone is looking at you, your mind is blank and panic creeping in around the edges. What is the first real practical thing a person can do?
So the very first tool, and this one sounds almost too simple when you first hear it, is to slow down your voice intentionally. Not slow down your thinking, not force yourself to feel calm, just mechanically, physically, slow down the speed at which you are speaking. And here's why that works in a really beautiful way. It's connected to how your nervous system responds to your own behavior.
That makes so much sense, Hannah. I've actually noticed that when I'm nervous, I start talking faster, almost like I want to get through the scary moment as quickly as possible. But I imagine talking faster probably makes everything worse, not better, because your brain is already overwhelmed, and now you're adding more speed to it.
Exactly, Abel, and that is such a sharp observation. When you speed up, you are essentially adding fuel to the fire. But when you slow down your voice deliberately, something really interesting happens. Your nervous system reads that slow, measured pace as a signal that you are safe. The brain starts to relax slightly because your own body language is communicating, there is no emergency here. We are okay.
So confidence actually comes after the slowness, not before it. That is a really important distinction. I think a lot of people wait to feel confident before they slow down, but it sounds like the process actually works the other way around. You slow down first, and then the confidence follows naturally behind. A little bit like a friend who always arrives late to the party.
Oh, I absolutely love that image, Abel. Yes, that is exactly it. Think of confidence as a slow friend who is always a little bit late. You cannot wait for that friend to arrive before you start doing things. You have to start without them, and then they show up a few minutes later once they see that things are already going well. Slow down first and let confidence catch up to you.
That is such a comforting way to think about it. Because often the internal conversation when I'm under pressure sounds something like, I need to feel confident right now, and because I don't feel it, something must be wrong with me. But if I know that confidence is simply running a little behind schedule, I can give myself permission to start anyway.
Perfectly said, and giving yourself that permission is such a huge part of the whole process. Now, let's talk about another incredibly common mistake that people make when they're under pressure, especially when they're trying to speak English in a formal or stressful situation. And that's the mistake of trying to use very big, complex, impressive-sounding vocabulary.
Oh yes, I know exactly what you mean. There's this idea that if you use sophisticated words and long, complicated sentences, you'll sound more intelligent or more prepared, and therefore the pressure will somehow feel less intense. But from my own experience, trying to reach for fancy words when my brain is already overwhelmed usually just makes everything come out messier and more confused.
That's 100% true, Abel. And there's actually a really good way to think about this. Imagine you're trying to cut through something with a knife. A clean, sharp, simple knife cuts straight through with almost no effort. But now imagine you try to cut that same thing with a big, heavy, over-decorated ceremonial knife that's really designed to look impressive rather than to actually work.
Right, and suddenly what should be a simple, clean cut becomes this awkward, heavy, inefficient struggle. So the lesson there is that simple language is actually the sharp knife, and complicated, fancy vocabulary is the heavy, decorative one that looks good on the wall, but doesn't perform well under real pressure. That is a really elegant way to frame it, Anna.
Exactly. And this is not just about English learners, by the way. Even native speakers who work in business or law or medicine are constantly being reminded to use clear, plain language when things get complicated or stressful. Because when you're under pressure, your listener is also under some pressure. And simple words allow your meaning to travel quickly and cleanly from your mouth to their understanding.
So the goal under pressure is not to impress, but to connect. And connection happens fastest with the clearest, most direct language available. That actually takes a lot of weight off, because sometimes I feel like I need to perform when I'm speaking English in a stressful moment, like I need to show everyone how much I know. But actually, I just need to communicate effectively.
Yes, and that shift from performing to communicating is one of the most important mindset changes a language learner can make. Now, here's another beautiful tool that works incredibly well when you're facing a long or complex thought under pressure. This one I call the stepping stones method, and it's all about how you structure your sentences in real time.
Okay, stepping stones. I love the image already. Tell me more about that one, Anna, because long sentences are definitely something I struggle with. I'll start saying something, and then somewhere in the middle I lose track of where the sentence was supposed to go, and by the end I've forgotten both my starting point and my destination, which is very disorienting.
Oh, I completely understand that feeling, Abel. So imagine you need to cross a fast, wide river. If you try to jump all the way across in one single enormous leap, you're probably going to land in the water. But if there are stepping stones, small, stable, individual stones placed across the river, you can cross safely and confidently, one small step at a time.
And that's exactly what you do with your sentences under pressure. Instead of trying to build one long, elaborate, perfectly structured sentence in one go, you break it into short, clear, individual chunks.
Each chunk is one stepping stone. You land on it safely, pause for just a breath, and then move to the next one. The meaning still arrives completely, just in smaller pieces.
Precisely, Abel. And the beautiful thing about chunking your speech that way is that the pauses between your chunks actually sound thoughtful and calm to your listener. They do not hear a nervous person struggling. They hear a composed, deliberate person who is choosing their words carefully. The pause that feels like an eternity to you sounds like wisdom to everyone else in the room.
That is actually a little bit mind-blowing, because every time I pause while speaking under pressure, I am convinced that everyone around me is thinking, oh, he does not know what he is saying. But what you're telling me is that from the outside, those same pauses probably look like I am being thoughtful and measured, not panicked and lost. That is a genuinely life-changing reframe.
It really is. And I want you to hold on to that reframe, Abel, because it matters. Now, let us talk about something that lives a little deeper inside the experience of pressure. Something that is more about your relationship with your own mistakes. Because making errors under pressure, whether in language or in any other skill, triggers a very specific inner voice for most people.
Yes, and for me that inner voice is not very kind. When I make a grammar mistake in public, or I use the wrong word, or I forget something important, the voice immediately says something like, "You see, you cannot do this. You are not good enough. You will never be able to speak well." And that voice feels so loud and so certain and so permanent, which makes everything even harder.
That voice is so familiar to so many learners, Abel. And I want to share one of the most powerful and simple tools for talking back to that voice. It is literally one single word. One word that transforms a statement of permanent failure into a statement of ongoing progress. And that word is yet. Just 3 letters, but it changes everything.
Oh, I have heard about the power of that word before, but I would love to hear how you actually use it in the moment, Anna, because in the middle of pressure, it is hard to remember anything. So how does yet actually change the internal conversation when your critical inner voice is being very loud and very certain about your limitations?
So instead of saying, I cannot speak English well in stressful situations, you say, I cannot speak English well in stressful situations yet. That tiny word at the end shifts the entire meaning. It moves the statement from a permanent, fixed conclusion to an ongoing process with a future ahead of it. You are not stuck. You are simply in the middle of learning something that takes time.
And that is actually true, right? It's not just a motivational trick. The word yet is factually accurate because language learning and calm under pressure are both skills, and skills genuinely do improve with practice and time. Saying you cannot do something yet is simply an honest description of where you currently are in the learning process, not a judgment of where you will always be.
Beautifully put, Abel. And connected to this idea of releasing judgment on yourself, I want to bring up something that I think removes a huge invisible weight from the shoulders of many English learners. And it's this simple idea. There is no teacher hiding behind the sofa with a red pen waiting to mark every single mistake you make in a real conversation.
The image of a teacher hiding behind the sofa is somehow both funny and very revealing, because that is genuinely how some conversations feel. Like there's an invisible examiner watching and recording every grammatical slip, every mispronounced word, every hesitation. And the fear of that imaginary judgment creates a completely unnecessary layer of extra pressure on top of the real pressure that already exists.
Yes, and this is such an important distinction to make. A classroom test and a real-life conversation are completely different environments with completely different rules. In a test, precision matters, because the point of the test is to measure accuracy. But in a real conversation, the only thing that truly matters is whether your meaning travels from you to your listener and lands there clearly.
So if I walk up to someone and ask them where the nearest coffee shop is, and I say it with a slightly wrong tense or a small pronunciation error, but they understand me and point me in the right direction, then I have completely won that communication moment. The grammar was imperfect, but the mission was accomplished, and the mission is always more important than the method.
Exactly right, Abel. Communication is about connection and meaning, not about perfection. And once a learner genuinely internalizes that idea, something remarkable happens. The fear of making mistakes loses a lot of its power. You start taking more risks with your language. And ironically, those risks are what actually produce the fastest growth and improvement over time.
So fear of mistakes slows down your progress, and releasing that fear actually speeds it up, which means that staying calm under pressure is not just a comfort thing, it's actually a strategic advantage for language learning. When you are calmer, you take more chances, you experiment more, and you learn more from each interaction you have, which is really motivating to think about.
It really is. And now, I think this is a wonderful moment for us to pause on a few of the key words and ideas that have been flowing through our conversation today. Because part of what makes a podcast like this special is that you're not just picking up mindset tools for handling pressure, you're also absorbing real, useful vocabulary along the way.
Yes, and I love this part of the show. Okay, so the first word that I want to highlight from our conversation today is the word anticipate. Anna, would you give us a simple, clear definition of that word for our listeners who might be encountering it for the first time today?
Of course, to anticipate something means to think ahead and expect that something is going to happen before it actually does. It's about preparation and prediction. So, for example, if you're going into a job interview and you study the most likely questions beforehand, you're anticipating the content of that interview and preparing yourself so the pressure feels more manageable.
Perfect example. And anticipate is a great word because it shifts you from a passive position to an active one. Instead of just waiting for pressure to arrive and hit you, you can anticipate it and have a small plan ready. Okay, the next word I want to talk about is one that came up naturally in our discussion of the inner critical voice. That word is self-conscious.
Yes, self-conscious is such an important word for language learners especially. To be self-conscious means to be uncomfortably aware of yourself and how other people might be looking at you or judging you. It's that feeling of being under a spotlight when you don't want to be. A simple example would be, I feel very self-conscious about my accent when I speak English in a formal meeting.
And that self-conscious feeling is at the root of so much of the pressure that language learners experience, because you're not just managing the language itself, you're also managing your awareness of being observed while you manage the language, which doubles the mental load immediately. Okay, the next word I want to bring in is misinterpret, which I think is connected to communication under pressure.
Absolutely connected. To misinterpret something means to understand it incorrectly, to get the wrong meaning from something that someone said or did. For example, because I was so nervous during the meeting, I misinterpreted my manager's question and answered something completely different from what she was actually asking. And that kind of misunderstanding happens a lot when pressure is high and listening attention drops.
Right, and that is actually a really common experience. When you are stressed, your listening quality goes down because your brain is too busy managing the stress to fully process what the other person is saying, which is another great reason why slowing down and breathing helps, because it frees up mental space for better listening, as well as better speaking.
Beautifully connected, Abel. Okay, the next vocabulary word I want to highlight is the phrase bounce back. This is a phrasal verb, and it is very commonly used in English to describe resilience and recovery. To bounce back means to recover your good spirits, energy, or performance after a difficult experience, like a rubber ball that hits the floor hard but immediately springs back up.
Oh, I love that one. And a really natural sentence for bounce back in the context of today's conversation would be something like, even though my presentation went badly last Thursday, I took a day to reflect, I used the yet mindset, and by Friday I had completely bounced back and felt ready to try again. That combination of resilience and forward motion is exactly what bounce back captures.
Perfect sentence, Abel. Now, the next word I want to bring in is presence, and this one has a slightly deeper, more layered meaning than it might first appear. In the context of staying calm under pressure, presence means the quality of being fully mentally and emotionally here, in this moment, rather than worrying about the past or anxiously projecting into the future.
And presence is something that almost disappears completely when pressure hits, because the moment stress arrives, your mind races forward into all the worst possible future outcomes, or it races backward to replay previous failures and embarrassments. Either way, you have left the present moment, and that departure makes it almost impossible to perform well right now, in this conversation, in this situation that is actually happening.
Exactly right. And bringing yourself back to presence can be as simple as focusing on one physical sensation for just 2 or 3 seconds. The feeling of your feet on the floor, the temperature of the air as it enters your nose, the weight of your hands in your lap. Those tiny anchors pull your mind back from the future or the past and return you to right now.
That is a really practical tip, and it connects beautifully to the next word I want to review, which is vulnerability. This is a word that people sometimes find a little uncomfortable because it is connected to weakness, but I think in the context of communication and pressure, it actually has a very positive and powerful meaning. Anna, how would you define vulnerability?
Vulnerability in this context means the willingness to be open about your struggles, your uncertainty, or your limitations without pretending to be more certain or more capable than you actually are. And the reason it is powerful is because it is genuinely connecting. When you say honestly to someone, "I am a little nervous right now, please bear with me," people almost universally respond with warmth and patience rather than judgment.
And that is so counterintuitive because the instinct under pressure is always to hide the nervousness, to pretend it's not there, which actually makes the performance more tense and more fragile. But when you acknowledge it openly and briefly, you release some of the internal pressure. And you also invite the other person to be human with you, which changes the entire dynamic of the interaction.
Wonderfully said, Abel. And the final vocabulary word I want us to explore today is grounding. Grounding is a technique and also a state of being. To be grounded means to feel stable, calm, and connected to the present reality rather than caught up in spiraling thoughts or emotions. And grounding techniques are small, quick actions you take to bring yourself back to that stable feeling when pressure starts to lift you off your feet.
And grounding can look really different for different people. For some people, it's taking 3 slow, deep breaths before speaking. For others, it's pressing their feet firmly into the floor beneath them. For others, it's reciting one very simple self-reminder, like, "I know enough, I'm here, and I'm ready." The specific technique matters less than the fact that it consistently works for you personally.
Precisely. And I think what's beautiful about all of these words, anticipate, self-conscious, misinterpret, bounce back, presence, vulnerability, and grounding, is that they are not just vocabulary items to memorize for a test. They are genuinely useful words that describe real emotional and psychological experiences that you will encounter in your real life every single day.
And knowing the words for your experiences gives you power over those experiences. Because when you can name what's happening inside you, you immediately feel slightly less overwhelmed by it. Naming something is the first step towards managing it. Language is not just communication, it is also a tool for self-understanding and self-regulation, which is a really profound idea when you think about it.
It really is, Abel. And I think we've covered so much rich, meaningful ground today. I would love to hear you take a moment to bring all of the main ideas together in a summary for our listeners, because I know some people are going to want to come back to this conversation and remember the key points clearly.
Absolutely, Anna. Okay, so let me bring together everything we have explored today. We started by understanding why the brain crashes under pressure. It's not a personal failing. It's your brain trying to run too many demanding processes simultaneously. The safety check, the language management, and the ego protection all at the same time, which uses up all available mental resources.
Keep going, Abel. You're doing brilliantly.
Thank you. So, tool number 1 was to slow your voice down intentionally and mechanically, because that physical slowness sends a safety signal to your nervous system and allows confidence to arrive afterward, like a slow friend who is always a little late but always does show up. Tool number 2 was to use simple, clear language instead of trying to impress under pressure. The clean knife cuts best.
That is exactly right. And what were the next key ideas, Abel?
Tool number 3 was the stepping stones method, breaking long, heavy sentences into small, manageable chunks so that you cross the river of communication one safe step at a time without the risk of falling in. Tool number 4 was the magic of the word yet, which transforms a voice of permanent failure into a voice of ongoing progress by simply acknowledging that you are still in the process of learning.
And do not forget the sofa idea, Abel, because I think that one really resonates with a lot of people.
Yes, of course. Tool number 5 was the reminder that real daily life communication is not a formal examination. There is no invisible teacher hiding behind the sofa with a red pen. Your only job is to make your meaning clear enough that it lands with your listener. If understanding happens, you have succeeded completely, regardless of whether the grammar was textbook perfect.
And what about the deeper ideas around presence and vulnerability and grounding, Abel? Because those felt really important to me.
Those were really the emotional heart of our conversation today. We talked about the importance of being present, which means keeping your mind here in this moment, rather than letting it race into worst-case futures or painful past memories. We talked about how vulnerability, being honest about your nervousness rather than hiding it, actually builds connection and releases pressure. And we talked about grounding techniques as a way to bring yourself back to stability when the pressure starts pulling you away from yourself.
That is an absolutely beautiful, comprehensive summary, Abel. And I think what I love most about everything we discussed today is that none of it requires you to be a different person or to have some special natural talent for staying calm. Every single tool we talked about is a learnable, practicable skill that gets better every single time you use it with intention and patience.
And that is such an important message for language learners in particular, because there is often this belief that some people are naturally confident speakers and others are just not, and that the divide is permanent and unbridgeable. But confidence under pressure is a skill, not a personality trait, and every skill responds to practice, repetition, and the right mindset adjustments over time.
Perfectly expressed. And before we close today's episode, I want to speak directly to you, the wonderful person who has been listening to this conversation with us. We would absolutely love to hear from you in the comment section. Tell us, what is your favorite way to stay calm when you feel pressure building? Or, if you prefer, write one meaningful sentence about your own English learning journey today.
Yes, please do share with us. The comment section is such a warm, encouraging community of learners from all around the world, and reading your reflections and your stories genuinely inspires us and helps us understand what topics matter most to you so that we can keep creating content that serves your real needs and real-life challenges.
And remember, every comment you write in English is itself a piece of English practice, so do not wait until you feel 100% confident. Write the comment now with the words you have today, knowing that your language is growing and improving with every single thing you do in it. There is no perfect moment to practice. There is only this moment, and this moment is enough.
That is such a beautiful note to close on, Anna. And I just want to add one final thought for anyone who might still feel a little daunted by the idea of staying calm under pressure. It is completely normal and completely okay to still feel nervous, even after hearing all of these tools today. Knowing the tools and using them smoothly takes time, and that time is not wasted. It is invested in yourself.
And that investment always pays off. Every single lesson you engage with, every conversation you practice, every mistake you make and learn from, every time you choose to keep going even when it feels difficult, all of that is quietly and steadily building the version of you who handles pressure with grace and speaks with genuine ease and confidence.
And we are so proud of you for showing up today, for choosing to spend 30 minutes investing in your language, your mind, and your communication skills. That choice is not small. That choice is the foundation of real, lasting growth, and we are honored to be a small part of your journey.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep speaking with confidence and ease. This is Anna.
And this is Abel, and you have been listening to the Mr. English Fluent Tutor podcast. Bye-bye. Take care.
And hey, if you enjoyed today's episode, do not stop here. Click on the next video right now and keep your English progress moving forward. Every minute you listen is a step closer to the fluency you're working toward. We'll see you in the next one.